Welcome back to Database History, where we dig into the stories behind the code that runs our world. Today, we're talking about a piece of software that you've almost definitely used, but probably never even heard of. It's called Berkeley DB, and it was the quiet, hidden engine that powered so much of the early internet. So, have you ever wondered about that? When the internet was really starting to take off, what was the invisible code, the hidden machinery, running in the background? Well, the answer isn't some big, flashy product with a huge marketing budget. Nope. It was a humble but incredibly powerful library that became the bedrock for a lot of things. Okay, so let's really get into this. For years and years, Berkeley DB was the definition of an unsung workhorse. It wasn't the shiny engine of the car everyone sees. It was more like the crankshaft deep inside it, this absolutely vital component you never lay eyes on, but without it, the whole thing just grinds to a halt. It was a fundamental building block for developers. And when I say it was everywhere, I'm not kidding. Berkeley DB was embedded deep, deep inside the software that really formed the internet's backbone. It was managing email queues, it was powering directory services, it was keeping track of code versions. All of this without needing its own special server or a whole team of database admins to look after it. It just worked. So where on earth did this thing come from? To really get that, we've got to go back to its birthplace, which happens to be this legendary hub for computer science innovation. All right, picture this. It's 1991. The place is UC Berkeley. Now, this is the same creative environment that gave us BSD Unix, which is a cornerstone of pretty much every modern operating system today. And it was right here that Berkeley DB came to life, designed from the ground up to be a super simple, super fast, and totally reliable database for these powerful new Unix systems. And this right here, this is the core of what made Berkeley DB so special. It was an embedded key value store. Now, that sounds technical, but it's a really simple idea. Unlike a big database like Oracle or MySQL, it's not a separate program you have to connect to. It's just a library, a chunk of code that literally becomes part of your application. And it's dead simple. You have a key, like a username, and a value, like a password. That's it. No SQL, no complex setup, just keys and values. But don't let that simplicity fool you, because this thing was incredibly robust. It gave developers different ways to store and get their data, like B-trees or hash tables. But the real magic, the reason everyone trusted it, was that it was transactional and ACID compliant. Now, that's just a fancy way of saying it was absolutely bulletproof. It made a promise that your data would never get corrupted, even if the power went out mid-operation. That's a huge deal. If you're looking for a modern comparison, the best one is probably SQL, the database that's almost certainly running on your phone right now. Think of Berkeley DB as its older, more hands-on ancestor. SQL gives you the power of SQL inside a simple file. Berkeley DB was much lower level. It gave developers more direct control, way more flexibility, but yeah, it also meant you had to do a bit more of the work yourself. So, you have this powerful, flexible, and free tool just sitting there, ready to be used. It's probably no surprise what happened next, right? It was just completely embraced by the open source community, the very people who valued those exact traits. And it became this go-to engine for the whole open source revolution. For a really long time, if you were an open source developer and you needed a reliable way to save data inside your application, Berkeley DB wasn't just an option, it was the option. It just became the default choice for what we call embedded persistence, which is really just a reliable way to make data stick around inside a program. And the list of projects that depended on it, wow. It's like a hall of fame of internet infrastructure. We're talking SendMail, which delivered a massive chunk of the world's email back in the day. OpenLDAP, the standard for directory services. Even early version control systems like CVS and, get this, parts of Google's Android operating system used Berkeley DB under the hood. I mean, what a classic open source success story. But as we all know, the tech world never, ever stands still. A corporate giant saw just how valuable this quiet little workhorse was, and their next move would completely change the project's path forever. So look at this timeline. This right here is the critical moment. For 15 years, Berkeley DB grows up in the open source world. And then 2006 happens. Oracle, the absolute titan of corporate databases, buys the company behind it. And that single event basically split the history of Berkeley DB into two totally different eras, before Oracle and after Oracle. And look, this was so much more than just a change of ownership. This was a total culture clash. You had the open, academic, permissive spirit of a university project smashing right into the tightly controlled, profit-driven world of a software giant. And the first and most painful change was all about the software's license. This quote really says it all, doesn't it? The new license was way more restrictive, and it just freaked out the open source community. For projects that were built on the idea of free and open software, this new direction from Oracle was a complete deal breaker. So developers started to leave, looking for, or in some cases, even building new databases that kept that original Berkeley DB spirit alive. But while its popularity in new projects definitely started to fade, the story doesn't just end there, not at all. The impact of Berkeley DB was just too deep, too fundamental to just disappear. So we really have to talk about its incredible and often invisible legacy. And what a legacy it is. For one, Berkeley DB literally taught an entire generation of programmers how to think about data inside an application. The patterns and the ideas it pioneered went on to influence countless modern databases that came after it. And of course, it's still out there. It's running quietly in older systems, and it lives on in all these open source forks that were created to carry the torch forward. And all of this just leaves me with this one fascinating thought. Berkeley DB was a true unsung hero of its time. So what's the equivalent today? What quiet, foundational piece of open source software are we all depending on right now without even realizing it, that we're going to be looking back on as an absolute legend in another 20 years? Makes you wonder.